Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is our Module 8, so we really only have 3 more meetings. We have Module 9, Module 10, and then we have panel presentation practice or a case problem response session. So I'm Michael Henry, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you this evening. We're going to be talking about leading the public relations function. So this is sort of the management side of public relations, but it's being a leader in the industry, knowing how the budgets and all of that sort of thing work, knowing how to set up your own business, etc. So that's really what we're talking about in this meeting, and really looking forward to you participating in this session. And we'd like you to sort of start by thinking about one leadership skill that you've explored in the last year, or something that you've read about in the materials, something that you feel is vital to public relations, especially. Go ahead in the chat window and just share a skill or a tool that you would like to use or learn more about as a leader. And Rick says listening, facilitating a team, securing and structuring and planning, budgeting, fantastic, strategic planning, wonderful, change management. Oh my gosh, negotiations, census building. Wow, this is exactly it. And the scary thing is, we're talking about this just for 1 hour tonight, and there's a lot here. So we're going to also point out to you, for those of you who are interested in connecting with others, you can use the messages function. I'm going to actually poll you right now and just find out who, I'm going to be honest, who does not have a mentor, someone you could call, someone you could send your case problem response to, your panel presentation to. Just say, I don't have a mentor. And it's okay. Okay. So we've got Mary, we've got Karen, Christine, Susan. Oh my God, too many people. So I am going to tell you that one of the secrets to getting your APR is making sure you have that collegial relationship with someone. So we really want to encourage you to get yourself a mentor. Now, I'm going to share with you a little tool that in the online study course, when you go to messages or you go to the little messages icon at the top of the screen, you can, in the to field, in the message, you could type APR, and it will show you a list of APRs. So you could reach out to someone that you've heard about in the program, someone who's there. Just you could shotgun and just send a message to a lot of APRs. Also, what you can do is go into the discussion area, and in the discussion area, you can look for people's names in the discussion. People who post introductions as a candidate and then become an APR are great people to be an APR mentor or a coach. You reach out to them, get connected. Even if you have nothing to talk about at this point, just get someone that you can call on. You will need them when you do the case problem response, for those of you who haven't done it, and also for your panel presentation. And also just reach out to me. I can help you find someone as well. I'm happy to do that. That's part of the reason I'm here. So leading the public relations function is 20% of the questions on the APR examination. Leadership, business literacy, organizational structures, resource management, problem solving, decision making. So there's a lot there. If this is a weak area, spend some extra time on this module. So speaking of not weak people, we have some great facilitators with us today. I'm going to say hello to Ken first. We didn't do a mic check on you. We just want to make sure we can hear you. Are you there, Ken? Can you introduce yourself? Can you say hello?
Hello, everybody. It's Ken Melton. Can you hear me?
We sure can. It's great that you're here. I'm going to ask you more questions in your introduction in just a little bit. Let's say hello also to Kurt. Kurt, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Say hello, Kurt.
Hey, there we
Uh-oh.
go. Good
There
evening.
you
Hi,
are.
Michael.
We
It's been
are
a little while since my last time, but it's great to be here. I appreciate being a part of this group as always.
excellent. We're really happy you're here. And Justine, welcome. And Justine, I don't know, I think you have facilitated before, have you?
Yes, I have. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for the
that's
invite.
great. That is fantastic. So let's hear a little bit from each of our panelists. Um, I'm hoping I do. I do, yes. So we have the leadership perspective. So we're going to think about leadership perspective. Public relations is also a business. Many of you are in profit-making businesses as a public relations professional, need to understand the commercial world, need to understand also nonprofit and government sectors in terms of resources. That is what this module is about. Budgets are really just a plan for how you're going to use your resources. Everything costs money, so we budget. The publicly owned companies, sometimes people say, well, gosh, I work for a school district. Why do I need to know about publicly owned companies? The APR wants you to be very broad in your understanding of all of those tools that are available, and especially reporting tools like Sarbanes-Oxley. Then also understanding people are a great asset, collecting, helping to really support that intellectual capital in an organization, and also understanding and tracking profit and loss for your organization, SWOT analysis for that. So Ken, there's a lot here. And sometimes Ken, and I really want you to dig into this a little bit, why leading the public relations function is important, how you studied for it, and following the exam. But oftentimes we have people who listen to this and they go, oh my God, I'm never going to get my APR. Do you have any words of help for them?
I would say continue to go on. I took APR Jumpstart, and then I took the APR course 3 times, and I was unable to complete it the first time out. The second time, I studied a little bit more. I took again. I continued going through the APR prep class again, doing the flashcards and everything else, and really realizing that it's all about your what you know. It's about how you apply things, not just knowing the definitions. And that's what really got me hung up. I'm just like, okay, I know all the history, I know the definitions. Like, no, how do I actually apply it to it? So it took me about a year to get it. After starting and stopping over several years, and I just tell people, don't give up. I mean, Michael was great. He took the time to talk to me and kind of boost me back up. I had a couple of great mentors. I actually work with one of my mentors now in a different part where I work, and it's just been great. I can't say more than enough. Every time this comes around, I try to put it on my calendar to at least come in and help out in some form or fashion.
Fantastic. And can you help people also understand? I mean, I try to help people understand the importance of a mentor. Can you talk a little bit about that? So understanding that you need someone, a colleague that you can talk things out with.
Oh yeah, I think one of these things I learned about the class is like you're not on this journey alone. I had a great mentor, and I also went out and got like a coach who had where we had a more personal relationship. So we would meet and we would talk, and he would like hold me accountable, getting me ready for me to meet my mentor, who was really making sure I got to my milestones. Because he was busy, but he was making the time to do that. He set up the he was like, I'm not gonna go and let you do your panel until I know you're ready, no matter what anybody else says. And that shows that he wasn't there just to check the box. And to have somebody like that on your side walking you through this, it's great, because there's a lot of times people just go in there and they feel like I got to do this on my own. But you have a great group of people here, and then when you have a mentor, that's a lifelong connection right there. I still keep in contact with them, so I'm all for this.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ken. And we also have Kurt. Kurt, feel free to share your story as well and introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I've been in public relations for more than 20 years of, I saying that just makes me, I can't believe it's been that long. And I just recently got my APR. I pursued a master's degree when I first got into public relations after, like a lot of people, switching over from news. And it's something I just really wanted to do. I felt like, um, I just felt like it was something that not only did I want to do, but I wanted to have just just the value of what it offered, even though it wasn't new material. However, it challenged me in a different way than master's classes, because academics is one thing, but applying it to what you were doing is another. And we've talked a little bit about that tonight. So, this session in particular is important because for people like me who don't use business in their everyday PR work, I've worked for nonprofits and in government, but it's been more in a tactical space. So I don't really have to use these terms very often. However, it's all about broadening your perspective and understanding here are things you need to know. Even if you're not going to use them, you need to have a baseline of knowledge. And that's the importance you get from the APR is you may not ever use crisis communications, although I think everyone probably uses that to some degree, or there may be certain things that you feel like you'll never need, but it's having that baseline of information of, okay, so I've learned some things about uh, financial, and for me it was a lot of memorization of terms, because that's really what this section is for, at least that piece. And then there's the other pieces about the management, line and staff management and all of that. However, so for me it was just a matter of studying. I used the APR prep course, uh, and yeah, I did every week for at least maybe the first couple. And then as I got into my studying, I would go back as needed and say, okay, I need a little more help in this area. So I would go back to a session and use this resource as a study help. So this was really my mentor. I didn't have a mentor. However, this was my accountability. And then as I got further along, I started talking with APRs and getting their input and getting help as I got closer to the exam. So I did it a little differently, but this was really my accountability, this group, and how I studied, and then how I used it first as really, as I said, weekly, but then after that, I would use it to go back to help supplement what I was doing. And so that was really important to my studying and then getting through into the exam and passing.
That is so great, Kurt. We're really happy you're here. And Justine, we also have frequently we say that that the APR is really not about memorizing, but this particular module has a little bit of memorization, and we have some flashcards in this module as well. Can you share how you studied for the examination and your introduction as well?
Yes, I totally agree that it's not all about memorization. I know in this section you really do have to know the terms, but one of the things that really helped me was this online course here that you're in right now. I took it at least 3 times, and every time I gained more value out of it, just because especially the exercises, you really are forced to think through the situations, and that's exactly what's on the exam. You have to be able to think through the questions. It's not like a math problem, or it's not like just a definition in the exam. You have to be able to recognize the scenario and recognize the correct answer to this scenario. And it's all about that practice session. And that's why the APR is more and more becoming the standard of professional communicators. And when you go out there and look for jobs, a lot of high-level jobs, executive jobs will want an APR after your name. So you're really in the right place, and this online module is great.
Excellent. And it seems like Naomi is in here. She says, Justine is my APR mentor.
I know me.
That's fantastic. So let's go ahead and move forward. We have a volunteer to help us with the scenario practice question. And Jillian, are you there?
Hi, Michael. Good evening.
Hi. I'm really glad you're here. You guys all know how this works. The scenario practice question is part of your study strategy. we'll go ahead and go right into the first question. Why don't you share this question with the group, please?
All right. You are the public relations manager of a publicly traded company, which is going to offer a new stock for sale. The company has registered the stock with the Securities and Exchange Commission, but the gag period, which embargoes publicity about it, has not ended. During a meeting of your company's top leadership, the chief operating officer asks about the possibility of issuing a written statement on this future sale now to get a jump on the news cycle. You explain the Public Relations Department will release the statement as soon as the gag period has ended to prevent your company from violating which federal business law? Choose one. Option A, Federal Corrupt Practices Act of 1925. Option B, the Sherman-Clayton Act, antitrust. Option C, Rule 5C of the Securities Act of 1933. Or option D, Security Exchange Act of 1934.
Okay, this is a tough question. Don't be shy about trying your best to answer this question, and lock in your answers in the chat area. T. Boyer says F. Not funny. That ain't gonna work on the examination. All right, according to the author of this question, the answer is C, Rule 5C, Securities Act of 1933. And I don't know, I would have said that. However, I have no idea why I would have said that. Since this question was really difficult, Jillian, would you read the rationale, please?
Yes. The KSA, of course, business literacy, source is the APR City Guide, page 74, and the rationale is Rule 5C of the Securities Act of 1933 deals with the registration of securities and led to the embargo of publicity materials during a specific time period, frequently called a gag period, because these materials could be construed as an effort to sell a new security. It stipulates no comments or written statements on future sales or earnings projections, predictions, estimates, or similar information can be given during this gag period.
All right, and let's get some feedback from the panel. And, frankly, I have to say, we studied trigonometry in school, but why? Some people are going to say that about this particular topic. So, Justine, do you have anything to share about how to get through this?
Yes, it's really important, even if you don't deal with this on a day-to-day basis, to know about these laws. Having worked at the Wall Street Journal and putting together graphs for the pages that have numbers on them, the numbers had to be triple checked, and those things affect markets. So it's very important to know what can and can't be said, and regulations are there for a reason.
Excellent. Kurt, anything to add to that? I thought that was kind of a difficult question.
Yeah, and again, for me, and this is a lot of memorization. Again, what I think the value is, again, is needing to learn these terms. I won't use them, but I at least have heard it now, and I'll have a reference for looking it up and saying, okay, what do I need to know about financial? And I'll need to pick up something and review it. But this was a very good, straightforward question. A lot of those like that, to where they just get right to it. What does this mean? What are we talking about? And it's very straightforward. So that's very much really the only way to handle this question. You just have to know those terms and what they are.
Great. Ken, anything to add?
Yeah, just one thing. When it popped up, I remember I told myself Rule 5C is gag period. That was my didactic memorization tool to get that. And there was something in there. I think it was when he said writing the materials, pre-writing materials, and I was like, we don't do anything because it could get out, and there should be a silent period. So there's certain little tricks and stuff that you can get to kind of memorize it. But yeah, just seeing it, Kurt, they covered it really well. It's it's just it's just something you have to ride and look. Hopefully, you don't have to get put in that situation where you're trying to explain that to somebody. It's kind of be tricky.
All right. All right. Let's go ahead and share this one, Jillian.
All right. You are part of the public relations team for a large. Oh, okay, sorry, I was just double checking. I'm like, wait a sec, this sounded familiar. For a large publicly traded social media company, one of your investors, a billionaire entrepreneur, is requesting material non-public information about the company and the makeup of its accounts via Twitter. You advise your team that rather than just reply to his tweet requesting this information, you must share this information with all investors at the same time. This action would keep your company in line with which business law and/or regulation? Choose one. A, Sherman-Clayton Act, antitrust. B, Regulation Fair Disclosure. C, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Or D, Federal Lobbying Act.
Okay, enter your responses in the chat window. Okay, we have a little disagreement. And okay, I wish you could say B or A or B or C. Okay, according to the author, it is B, the Regulation Fair Disclosure. You can see the rationale there. We're a little tighter on time, so I'm going to have that on the screen. You can always go back to the recordings to see, and to the PDF of the slides to see the rationale. First of all, I just want to get a quick answer from everybody. Did this look like a question that you might see on the examination, Ken?
Absolutely. And there, again, I'm looking for the keyword, and I think the keyword there was at the same time. So I'm like, at the same time, everybody got it fairly, and that's the kicker that kind of drives it in there. If it had been like something like Sarbanes-Oxley mostly deals with like politicals and stuff and individuals, but if everybody's getting the same time, that automatically triggered my mind. Is like, okay, well, if everybody's doing the same time, it's fair. So that's key. It's got to kind of really look into the sentence and not let everything else distract you.
Excellent. Any comments from Justine or Kurt? Anything you wanted to share there?
Yeah, again, as mentioned in the previous question, that was material information that could influence an investor's decision to buy or sell. And it says it was adopted in 2000. So making sure, like Ken said, that all information is given to investors at the same time.
Excellent. All right. We have module notes, business literacy. Again, this is a thick module. There's just a lot of information there, and Julie has put together some nice review slides for this project. Julie, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay.
Go ahead and share. If I could go to the next slide. For some reason, it says I can. Oh, that's nice. So there was just a little giddy up. There we go. Go ahead and take it away.
All right. There's a lot in this module, so I tried to cover what I felt were really the most critical parts. So if you go next slide, please. So 3 types of organizations to be aware of. For-profits, those are your publicly or privately held companies. They do business to make money for their shareholders. Examples are Microsoft and Apple. Nonprofits really are provide a public service. Their proceeds are used to expand their organization or support its mission, and think hospitals, colleges, charities. Not-for-profit is slightly different. They may generate surplus revenue, but it's used for operations and not for owners. Think insurance companies, credit unions. Next slide. If you think about, there are different types of organizational structures for decision-making. There's centralized versus decentralized. In a centralized organization, it's referred to most often as a top-down approach, where it's vertically structured. The pros to this are consistency and coordination, and easier to drive changes potentially. Some of the cons are potentially greater separation from the customer and limits the ability to regionalize or customize. In a decentralized organization, decision-making is distributed more across the organization. Some refer to that as being flat or horizontally structured. The pros to this are flexibility to be responsive to the market changes and greater accountability. Cons can be that it could cause duplication in function or create silos. Next. There's also a reference to the way that businesses function. There are line functions and there are staff functions in an organization. Line function examples would be product or profit producing groups such as engineering, production, marketing, while staff functions are really those groups that advise or assist those lines functions. Executives, think PR, which is usually a staff function. It's also important to understand what organizational culture is, and that is the total of shared values, symbols, meanings, beliefs, assumptions, and expectations that organize a group of people that work together. There's also a reference in here that says it's often readily recognized or felt in organizations, and it can be critical to understanding how to frame communications, and it's a powerful influence on individual behaviors. So lines function versus staff function in PR. Are you a technician or a manager? And there were 4 categories of this. There are communications technicians. These are the individuals that often are doing the tactical work or writing and editing materials, developing content, arranging events, etc. You have communications facilitators. These roles often serve as spokespersons. They maintain the two-way communication. They provide information needed to make decisions. They might establish agendas, summaries, or calls for reaction. You also have problem-solving facilitators. These are individuals that collaborate with managers to solve problems, apply step-by-step PR solutions. They use knowledge of policies and procedures and actions to create solutions. And then you have the category of expert prescriber. These individuals anticipate and analyze and interpret public opinion. They set objectives, budgets. They provide strategic counsel. They train staff, plan efforts to change policy, conduct the RPI process. Staff functions normally operate in 2 to 4, and numbers 2, 3, and 4 need clear understanding of management roles and responsibilities. Businesses also have critical tools for problem solving and decision making. There are these 4 common examples. One is a cause and effect diagram. This uses a process that analyzes problems by thinking through reasons they exist, and this is also referred to as a fishbone diagram. There are drill down techniques that you can use and create a visual image of a problem by breaking it down, identifying solutions by responding to many parts or factors of the problem. You also have Porter's 5 forces, which assesses 5 important forces that can affect competition. Those are supplier power, buyer power, competitive rivalry, threat of substitution, and threat of new entry. And one of the most common is SWOT analysis. And companies often use this. You evaluate the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats for business that are internal and external. Some call that a 4-box. Next slide. When you're working with a business, there are important financial statements to understand. You have your balance sheet, which shows your assets, your liabilities, capital equity at a specific time. You consider it a snapshot of the business and its financial performance. You also have an income statement, and that illustrates the profitability of a business over a period of time, either a month, a year, or a quarter. These documents show gross income, revenues, expenses, and net income. And then you also have statements of cash flow. These are normally filed by public corporations. They show changes in balance sheet and income over a period of time. This can also be referred to as cash in and cash out. Next slide. We touched on a few of these in the questions, but there are important laws and regulations for PR. You have the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and that was in 2002. This regulates the accounting practices of publicly held companies. It came and emerged out of the Enron scandal and is designed to minimize fraudulent reporting. Looks like a little bit is cut off, and I think that was executives must certify these when they're reporting. Foreign agents, there's the Foreign Agents Act of 1938. You must register if you're working with foreign governments to do lobbying or work. And this is a response to work that was done by Karl Bayor and Associates in the 1930s on behalf of Nazi Germany. Lobbying is another practice. The Federal Lobbying Act of 1913 indicates that lobbyists must register on the 1st and 10th day of the quarter and report money received and by whom, and any actions that they've taken to support a corporation's interest to influence policy or legislation. There are also antitrust laws. There's a Sherman-Clayton Act and the Robinson-Putnam Act. And these are really designed to point out that it's illegal to engage in activity that could ruin or be a detriment to competition. You had the Fair Disclosure Rule adopted in August of 2000, and all publicly traded companies must disclose information to investors at the same time. Political contributions are also governed by the Federal Corrupt Practices of 1925, the Hatch Act of 39, and the Taft-Hartley Act of 47. These prevent organizations from directly contributing to political campaigns or for candidates accepting contributions. Some companies do have political action committees, and this is one way that's used to get around this. Okay, next. SEC, so we touched on a couple of these in the questions, but first you have the Securities Act of 33 and the Securities Exchange Act of 34. It ensures transparency for publicly traded companies by putting requirements around financial information for investors. Specific parts of these acts relate to PR practice, including Rule 5C. This embargoes publicity materials during a specified time frame called the gag period. This is 90 days post-registration. You also have blackouts. These are different from gag periods. This pertains to limiting access to employee benefit information and during political campaigns. It establishes a set period when benefits cannot be modified for during an election, or you can't communicate during election. Disclosure in the Exchange Act of 1934 requires equitable transparency in the release of information to all investors at the same time. You have Rule 10b-5. This protects against fraud and disclosure. Company must assure that the information they release is also accurate and complete. And this could include press releases, speeches, publications, etc. In 1963, the SEC study pointed out rules around insider trading and material information sharing and violations against these requirements. Section 14 of the Act of 1934 addresses the regulation of proxy solicitations. It requires that companies must provide shareholders with clear, accurate, and complete information when seeking their votes on matters such as mergers, acquisitions, or the election of directors. And then you also have the quiet period. And this is the time between registration and the public offering when the SEC declares registration effective. No promotion or information can be released during this time to cause impact or influence to the stock price. Okay. There's also common forms of SEC documentation that are required by companies. You have your 10K, which is also an annual report. This is most commonly an annual review of company's performance and its financials. You're required to file it within 60 days of your year close. It analyzes your business results, provides a view of operations and risks, creates a picture of company's overall health. And similarly, the 10Q report is a quarterly financial report of unaudited data. You also have the 8K report, and this is a current profile of business for investors. You file it within 4 days of actions that could impact the business stock price, and it reflects unscheduled material or corporate events of significance, may indicate potential problems such as pending litigation, and it's useful to PR professionals for environmental scanning. And then there's Form 14A. This filing is submitted when soliciting shareholder votes. It's usually significant for corporate actions, board changes, mergers, acquisitions, provides advance information to enable voters to make informed decisions. Next. And then budgeting. So when you're developing budgets as a PR practitioner, there are some guidelines. 3 important ones are to know the price of items, to communicate budget related to cost to deliver results, and to manage the program. And there are 4 different methods that are most often used to determine PR budgets. The first is available money, and this is usually generally a percentage of a company's overall budget. You also have competitive necessity, where you evaluate competitive spend and attempt to match it or exceed it. There's also a model that looks at aligning goals to tasks, and that amounts are budgeted based on specific PR activities in the plan. And then you have excess after expenses, where the funds would come from profits. This is usually the least favored, as it de-emphasizes the importance of the PR function. Next slide.
Wow,
That's
there's
it.
a lot there. Great job. Really great job. Let's get some feedback. Again, this module can scare people, and so let's allay some of their fears. Justine.
Don't be afraid. Fear not. Because this contains a lot of information that you can memorize. I think this is one of the modules that the flashcards are extremely helpful, and it's just about memorization. I like the budgeting information. I think it's very important. As you rise up in the PR field, budgets become more important. Like, for instance, we do the align to goals task where I am, but now we're in a situation where we have to move to competitive necessity. So it's always good to know where you are in the budget framework.
Great. Kurt.
Yeah, I mentioned in the chat about what Ken said earlier about keywords and finding ones that help you remember each of those, or however it works best for you. Also for me, because a lot of this was new, although I've heard of a lot of these, I tried to not memorize everything at once. I, as I would go through everything, I would then try to revisit, not get too overwhelmed at one time. I would study it a little bit, go to something else, come back to it later. And for me, studying in chunks help, and not trying to sit down and memorize a whole unit at one time. For me, it was easier to break it up into chunks and revisit, and it became more familiar as I would go back to it. So that was helpful for me. And depending on how you remember things, if you're just needing some rote memorization, that worked for me. And just going back from time to time and not getting frustrated about not catching on right away. So that's just helpful, and allowing yourself that time to become comfortable with the terms.
Great. Ken, anything you want to highlight in that presentation, or share your experience on that?
Yeah, sure. I just want to go off what Kurt was saying about the study methods. I recommend using the Pomodoro method. I believe that's called. It's 25-minute studying. Then you take like a 5-minute break, 25 minutes back on, take a 5-minute break. And you do that for about like an hour or two, and that'll really, keep your brain fresh. And I also just want to say that when you start dealing with numbers, I'm not a numbers guy. Don't be afraid to ask your finance people for help when you start dealing with budgets. They're more than happy to help you.
That is really special. And actually, in the online class, and Ken, I'm sure, remembers this, that one of the activities is a business literacy scavenger hunt. And we encourage you to go find your financial people at your organization and just talk to them about what is the difference between an asset and a profit, or whatever. Help get that discussion going, because they will be able to give you more context to some of this stuff, which is a little out of our field in terms of communicators. We have a great presentation from Andrea regarding the crisis response. Remember, last week we had a crisis response. It's important, and we really want to share this for a couple of reasons. One is it's really a good response, but also it's really helpful to understand that the APR loves process. So the more there are actually 3 different things that you should just really be able to lay out what is the process. And the first is RPI, is planning, communication planning. You should be able to lay out in order of importance all of the steps that you would go through to create a communication plan. You should also be able to look at an ethical situation and be able to lay out the decision-making process. What are the things you would do to justify an ethical decision? rather than just sort of making a snap decision. The same thing is true of a crisis response. There is almost a step-by-step process that the APR is looking for in terms of how you respond to situations. So we really encourage you to think that way as you go forward. And again, for some reason, it'll go forward in a second, I hope. It'll probably go forward many times because I've clicked. Some technology is just so great sometimes. All right, we're going to go forward. Hello.
All right.
Okay. Oh, it's
Oh.
coming back. Coming back.
There we
Hang
go.
on. Hang on. Okay, so I'm going to try
Yep.
to get back to the beginning. Why is it giving me such a hard time today? Go for it, Andrea. I'm going to mute
Okay.
myself
Huh.
so I don't
So
swear.
I had wanted to do this presentation because it's one of the few pure PR things that I do. Most that I do is ends up being marketing. So this is why I wanted to do this one. So this was a real life situation. You could go to the next slide. So you are the public relations director for an agency. A respected pediatrician's office experienced a domestic violence situation in the reception area that resulted in an employee being murdered and the ex-husband committing suicide. There were several eyewitnesses ranging in age from 1 year old to 76 years old. And the business owner is overseas with 48-hour travel time to return to the United States. So by defining the crisis, this was a violent, immediate, and deliberate crisis. There was no time for research or planning. The media was already on site. The principal of the business was overseas, and he had no crisis plan. So he hired our firm, and we immediately notified our agency crisis response team that this crisis was real and that they should each initiate their separate steps. And we had people and processes in place, even though they weren't specific for this situation. So it made it easier for us to do this. So we monitored media, and at that time we set up Google Alerts. We coordinated with law enforcement, so we made sure we got on the phone and connected to the people who were on scene. We started to get names of the witnesses and the contact information for them. We got in contact with the media that was already reporting and in contact with the victim's family. And so then the identifying of the publics were the employees, the eyewitnesses, the media, and the community in general. Next slide. So the agency had a basic plan to follow, and we just adjusted some pre-written press releases and Twitter posts, and we decided to go exclusive with the media to avoid an influx of press. And we also needed a different plan for the eyewitnesses because each one we're required to give counseling to and to provide access to like a priest or a minister or something similar. And so the initial messages that we put out in the media were to kind of control the message, and it was about what the organization was doing to keep the employees safe and the surrounding community safe. And the family of the victims wanted us, not the police, to release her name on the news. So that actually helped us get the exclusive with the news. So we prepared our spokesperson. We assigned the spokesperson and prepared them to talk with the media and with the families and made sure that they were readily available for interviews. Anyone that called, we talked to, even though we directed all of our statements back to the one news outlet. And the interviews went live within hours, and our spokesperson was able to deliver the message. When the principal returned, we were able to brief him and give him some talking points and give him some basics on media presenting because he was new to this. Next slide. So we implemented the plan, and this all happened very, very fast. We conducted the media interviews. We kept the employees and the family updated while the principal was traveling. We also kept the principal updated while he was traveling. We coordinated group counseling event for the eyewitnesses. And then at the event, so it was a big event with the police, and then we had the ability for them to break off independently afterwards if they had specific needs they wanted to discuss. Then we had to coordinate a live shooter training for the staff at the office and coordinate a training about domestic violence situations, because those are special circumstances in workplaces. I did not know that. We coordinated the biohazard cleanup. The police does not clean up the crime scene, and I did not feel it was the employee's job to do so. So we coordinated that. We coordinated a televised, he called it a cleansing ceremony with their religion, and they televised it because he wanted the community to see and to be invited, to have a little bit of cleansing and healing, and other people to talk to. And then the final thing that we had to do, which was brutal, was to coordinate a safety inspection with the police department, where he went through the office and notified them of all of the design things that they would need to change. So for example, the reception desk only had one way in and out. Therefore, when the husband got mad, she had nowhere to go and hide except for towards him. So they had to actually redesign the office. Next slide. So as once the crisis was kind of contained and business went back to usual, we reviewed our response, and we updated a lot of our materials and included a broader sense of situations that we could face, because this was not one we had thought of. And then I like that he talked about ethical situations, because sometimes it feels like the right thing to do is not the fastest or what's going to make it go away. And we even had discussions after the family had said that they wanted us to release her name because it just didn't feel like it was quite our place. So it took some internal discussions to get comfortable with that. And then we just continued to monitor the media and advise our client. One of the things we were able to advise the client on, which I think he found helpful, was how to use our billings and as insurance claims. So he was actually able to get repaid for a lot of the expenses of us. And next slide. Yeah, and then go get ready for the next one.
So
that's it. So I don't know.
that's all. Thank you very much for that. Let's get some feedback from the panel, and feel free to ask questions as well. Let's start with, oh, and I'm so sorry, I have the wrong names here.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and start with Kurt.
Excuse me. Well, there's a lot going on right there, and working in public health, some of my radar was going off because, again, of because of privacy and obviously ethics you have to follow. There's the law enforcement aspect, and I guess you probably would have had to work with law enforcement. It said that the family asked your agency to release names. I assume there was a lot going on there with privacy. I guess I would just be interested in knowing. I know we don't have time to discuss that, but I would be interested in knowing more about that and privacy, and getting all of the necessary approvals for all of those things that you would have had to have dealt with because of where it happened. And then again, also dealing with some of the counseling issues, which is interesting. I think there's just a lot to chew on, and knowing the processes you have to go through, regardless of then the information and how you feed that to the media. And you have a crime scene, and it's not a disaster scene. It's unique because it's a crime scene and not just a disaster response. So I think there's a lot there to learn from, and how we would handle a situation like that.
Yeah, Ken, do you have any questions or comments?
First off, it's kudos, because that's a tough one right there. When I, prior to my role, I was actually working in the Marines, and we had a active shooter in our recruiting stations, and it's very difficult because there's a lot of, what can we say, what can we do, and you guys, the way you showed is picture perfect. You responded, you didn't, you were just, and I don't want to say emotional, but you're emotionally intelligent enough to kind of work with the family. I like the nice touch of doing like a cleansing ceremony at the end. I did not know that police did not do a cleaning after an incident. That's really traumatic to have somebody in your staff think about having to do that. But no, everything. I mean, I that was a great plan from my perspective. And it's yeah, you're right. You do all this hard work, you get it out, and then it's like, okay, what's next?
Justine.
Yeah, my question was how, and I know somewhat of what you went through, having been through a similar situation at our facility, but wondering how you handled HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, with regard to releasing the name.
Yeah, that was so when I think that there was already rumors kind of swirling around because there was in the age of social media, there was witnesses on scene that were putting up the videos and all of that kind of stuff. And I tell you, I was not comfortable releasing the name. I didn't even see really what the good of it was going to come. But her immediate family really wanted, she had like 10 kids. Okay. And this was her ex-husband. So, they just wanted it to be handled in a way that didn't seem chaotic. And so that was one of the reasons why we chose to go exclusive. So we called because we were getting phone calls from everywhere once it found out that we were the agency. And so we just kind of went with one of the top rated local news, and we had them come in and then just kind of do the whole story with us and gave them the whole thing, and then released it, that everyone could kind of quote from it and take from it. And that was just to control our phones and to try to control the scene. And so if it wasn't somebody from that source, then we, could ask them to take a step back or something. But yeah, it was pretty dramatic. And all of the eyewitnesses, I think we just had to keep all of that information private. We weren't allowed to release any of that information. And even when we were in the counseling events, I think everyone remained kind of anonymous, even though a lot of them worked together or next door, so they knew each other.
Yeah, it's impressive how you took care of the family and the eyewitness. Nice.
Yeah, I don't know whether we had to. My boss said we had to, so that was just what we did, and it seemed like the right thing. But yeah, I've seen this unfold on the news, unfortunately 100 times. But to be in there and it's like, what do you mean they don't clean it up? There was like knocked over lunch, Slurpee cups, and the ice was melted in puddles, and all they do is take the bullets out of the walls and the bodies. Everything else is just left. And yeah, that was too traumatic to leave for employees.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. We're going to we'll change the subject really quickly here. We're going to leave you with a couple of things, and frankly, and I'm actually going to get some feedback from the panel on this. I'm going to share, and many of you have heard that I'm stepping away from the APR prep course. But one of the things that I feel is the secret to the APR is putting yourself in your audience's shoes and thinking like your audience. And you've heard people talk about the difference between outcome and output objectives. Frankly, most PR practitioners, when they first come to the APR, they are more on the tactical side of public relations, not thinking strategically. And the strategy of putting yourself in the shoes of your audience and then finding a way to connect with them in that perspective is really helpful. So the reason output objectives are not as powerful from that perspective is because it's reflecting what the organization is doing. So when you write objectives, the APR sort of encourages you to want to write objectives that reflect a change in attitude or action in your audience, not what we're doing as communication professionals. So it's about our audience now recognizes the significance of this by this date. Our audience endorses this effort by this date. So it's who does what by when, and that is an outcome objective. That is phrasing it in such a way that is reflective of what your audience is thinking and feeling, not what the organization is communicating. So phrase objectives in specific terms that you desire, you want your audience to feel, or your audience to understand, or your audience to appreciate or perceive. And so each objective should cite a specific audience, and the closer you can get to a specific audience, the better. The outcome, what will happen, and the attainment level and the timeline. So that's who does what by when and how much. At the end of 6 months, 65% of our employees will be in a carpool or a rideshare program. That's reflective of what your audience is going to do. And honestly, if you get that perspective, see, now I can't change the slides again. I may just have to call on you. We're going to get some feedback from our panel. But it seems to me that when you have that perspective of this is what we want our audience to be the one that we're looking at, and I want to think about what it feels like to be in our audience, is something that will help you understand the strategy of the APR. So let's see, I cannot change the slide. It's really funny this evening, and it's going to flip forward. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Ken first. Ken, I've just kind of little bit pontificated, but I've been doing this for a while, and it seems to me that that is the nut of the APR, is this idea that we're our audience's agent. We're the advocate of our audience.
Oh, for sure. I mean, even when we just saying out, like you said, the output is like that's what the company cares about. The company cares about how you're going to make the money, but the outcome is how you're going to get people to care about it and get people to actually be a part of it. And I think a lot of, well, not I think, I know a lot of companies they don't think about the customer at the end until they get their output. So just having that in mind, I even like to go a little bit further in the audience and drop down into personas to really kind of show like who this person is. Person A would like it this way, and this is how we should get them to do it. And I love who does what by when and how much. It's like a song in my head that's staying in there rent free. That's I say that all the time when I ask somebody. I'm like, why are we doing this? Who does what by when and how much? And people are like, what? Like exactly.
That's great.
So yeah, that's yeah, all of that and the above. That's all I can say.
How about you, Kurt?
Well, I just threw into the chat there that, measurable objectives need to be measurable. Otherwise, we have nothing to evaluate other than what did we do and not what were the outcomes. So we can say, well, we placed a bunch of ads, but did we see any results? So measurable objectives lead to focus tactics and then meaningful evaluation. So it's all part of it. You set your goal. Your objective is important because then it gives you something to measure, and those can then be adjusted possibly, or you then see in your evaluation, well, we did or didn't meet this. This was or wasn't realistic, and then you learn next time how you can make better objectives that can. It all just leads to, again, use of tactics, resources, and then evaluation. So objectives are really important to the entire process downstream.
Great. Justine, final comments.
Yes, it's all about moving the needle, and objectives, specific objectives do that for you.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, we are getting towards the end of this cohort, and as I pointed out, the course is being migrated to PRSA, and I just heard today that they're not going to release it until 2026. So the reality, and I need to share this with you, the reality is, as of August, you have until August, and I'm here. Reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Reach out to others. You have until August, and then at August, the course terminates. And and that's just the reality of it. We are here to help you as you go through that process. Let's give a big thank you to Justine. Justine, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you.
And Kurt, so glad you're here as well. And Ken, thank
Yes,
you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
And
Definitely,
really,
always
really
a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
excellent. Thank you all. So we will see you next week. Think about Module 9 now, managing relationships, and go ahead and do those activities. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.